Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Join us as we seek the truth and travel the long road to justice. Hi, everybody. It's Friday, February the 12th, and we wanted to hop on and do a little quick sweet tea session, one of our newer mini episodes. And we wanted to cover the bond hearing for Ariel Robinson that was held earlier today here in Greenville, South Carolina. And also at the end of this, we're going to touch on Emma Daybell. Chad Daybell's daughter finally broke her silence yesterday with Shanley Painter on Court TV, and it was pretty enlightening.
Dude, when I saw that, I was like, what?
I know. I mean, Emma is the one sibling that's been in the news a little bit, just kind of at the beginning with her behavior and that kind of thing. But we're going to cover this bond hearing for Ariel Robinson, who is accused of murdering Victoria Rose Smith. And before we get into the bond hearing Sunday, we're planning on having a pretty big episode that's going to cover Ariel and her husband, Austin. And what we do when we start covering a new case is we typically sometimes we can spend 8 to 10 hours a day online researching these people and their lives before crimes take place. And it gives us a really good understanding of personality and maybe intentions and all kinds of stuff. So we have spent a lot of hours pouring through podcasts, watching YouTube videos before they were pulled down, just going over everything. And I think we're starting to see a little bit of a pattern with her. And just one little thing that we have found is, what did we find on an Instagram video? Actually, it was her first Instagram live that I can find.
Yeah, I think it was, about 7 years ago?
This was August 19th was when the video was posted. According to Ariel, 7 years ago, in 2019, so it would have been about 9 years now, was when she says they started their adoption process, which is before these children were born that were in her care when Victoria died. So what did we find out about the initial adoption process that they were going through? So
they had a child placed with them for 2 weeks while the mom got back on her feet.
This was 7 years ago, by the way.
Yep. She says that it stuck with them, that they spent hours upon hours researching. And then she posted a video on August 19th about adoption, asking for donations up to $30,000.
Yeah. So the video was several minutes long, and she happily comes on that they have been placed. At the time, it was going to be a newborn baby girl that was due, I believe, November of 2019. That fell through. And so I guess that's sort of the process that led to her getting Victoria Rose and her siblings. But so her very first post on Instagram, she's asking for $30,000 in donations to facilitate this adoption. So that's just one of the things that we found going over all the social media accounts that we can find. And then we kind of have some little tricks of going way back and looking at stuff just by year. So we found some things, and we're going to do a big episode on that Sunday. But today we had the bond hearing.
Yeah, it was packed. There was a lot of screens on there.
Yeah, and so I'm very interested, and it hasn't been released. I want to see the coroner's report because, I'm very curious to see if there were any old fractures that have healed. I'm curious as to when the abuse started. I would venture to say pretty soon after placement.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I want to see are maybe text messages between Ariel and Austin prior to getting the kids and during the process. At what point maybe were there signs of trouble or unhappiness? So there's a lot we just don't know yet.
Yeah.
Well, what was your impressions about the bond hearing?
I mean, I thought the judge was very sympathetic to Victoria's mother. Mm-hmm. She offered her condolences and all. I was trying to read. I just think that Ariel thought she was going to get bond. Mm-hmm. Her reaction when she didn't was very telling, I thought.
I took screenshots. So I took a screenshot of as soon as the camera comes on, and she's kind of grinning and trying to look pleasant. And then when the judge predictably denies bond, it's almost like she just can't believe it.
Yeah, she puts her head down on the desk.
Yeah.
Or whatever she's sitting at. She puts her head down. And she actually walks off before I think the judge was saying, I'm going to come back on here. She was talking about something about coming back on or something. And
yeah. But a lot of times too in bond hearings, once bond has been denied, I think if you look to the far right, you can see them opening the door. So once she's been denied bond, she goes back, I believe. It was probably just some housekeeping stuff of future dates or something like that didn't require her to be there, but she was ready to get out of there.
Yeah.
So let's start from the beginning. I think the biggest thing for me that was a shocker is that these kids were not formally adopted.
Oh, game changer.
Huge.
Yeah, that's a game changer.
And ironically, the date the adoption was going to be finalized was the date that Austin and Ariel were arrested for her murder.
Yeah.
I mean, the day they were arrested.
So several things this tells us. Yes, they were fostering, because we have that question. Were they signed up to be foster parents or just straight up adoption? So we see this. So we know they're fostering. So those stipulations we talked about on the last episode is very daunting, and normally it's a lot of information and you have to jump through all these hoops and everything. So we know that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the shocker was that the adoption wasn't final.
Right. So my question is, when was the last time DSS popped in on these people as foster parents to check on these kids?
Yeah.
That's going to be, like you say, it's a game changer, because these kids were not legally their children. They were custodians or guardians at that point.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see the fallback on DSS, and there has to be drop balls. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We know just from the fact that their house was in foreclosure the month they got the kids.
Yeah. I mean,
things are crazy.
Yeah. And there's got to be a change. It's got to be a change. I mean, you can't, if you're a caseworker for DSS, I totally get you're probably overwhelmed with all the cases, but you can't, like, if you mess up, a child can die. I mean, that's where we're at.
I don't think that it's typical that you go to a house where a child has been beaten to death and it started that day. What we're probably going to find with the brothers, the biological brothers of Victoria and the foster brothers, is more of a day-to-day pattern of, did they see the mom kind of bullying the daughter? The one thing to me, and I don't think that we talked about it on the last podcast, is there was a picture of Ariel with Victoria, and of course she was all dolled up, and Victoria was not looking at the camera, I don't think. And Ariel's caption on that picture was, "Her daddy's blowing her kisses. I did all this work to make her look pretty." I'm paraphrasing, but I'm not jealous. And then she put a little face that's kind of like the neutral face.
Yeah.
Kind of like almost a fed up face.
Yeah.
So what did Ariel, we listened to the 911 call, and we also want to give a quick shout out to Fitz News here in Greenville, who got the 911 call, even though it wasn't the full call. I don't think they released it. And also the sheriff's report. Those two things were gotten by Fitz News, and gave us a little bit of insight into stuff. So the 911 call, we know that Austin said she was choking on water. So what we know, when first responders came, they saw the unexplained extensive bruising on her body. Where was that bruising?
Oh, they said it was all over. It was on her abdomen, her ear, abrasions on her face, bruising on her back, up and down both legs. And I'm going to tell you what, and this may be down later, I don't know, but the fact that her husband was going to the store to get stuff that takes away bruising.
Right.
I mean, that's a red flag.
Huge, because they're already pointing fingers. He has already said that it was her.
Yeah. And
she was shaking her head no when the prosecutor was relaying what Austin had told investigators. She was shaking her head like, that's not correct.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Even if she did beat the child to death herself, he's going to be complicit in it. If there's prior abuse going on and he didn't report it even 6 months, in the past, he's still culpable for her. Yeah. You don't have to kill somebody to be charged with murder. You can just be there.
Yeah. And it's 5 days later when, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's not like when this happened, he called, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, he didn't turn it in right then.
Exactly. He did things to cover it up, which is after the fact. It's a crime.
Yeah.
So on the redacted sheriff's report, we now kind of have an idea of what she said happened the day before.
Yeah. She said that they were on their way to church and Victoria threw up. They went home and she went to sleep and had no real issues. So she woke up the next morning, ate pancakes. Ariel and Austin were home along with Victoria because all the other kids were at school.
Which I thought, unfortunately, we won't know probably the truth of what actually happened that day because it seems like there were no other witnesses. But didn't we see that they had cameras in their home on something?
Yeah, it was. She posted a picture of a camera in Victoria's room that I guess it was like a monitor or something.
Oh, okay.
And because it had her oldest son sitting in the rocker rocking her.
That's right.
So yeah, we said there were cameras in there.
Yeah. So she said that Victoria complained of a stomach ache and that she was cold. So Ariel claims that she put a heated blanket on her and she said she was holding Victoria when she went limp.
Yeah. But it just doesn't make sense.
No, none of it does.
So she said, they're saying she drank too much water, that she's choking on water. And this is like weird to me because we've both taken CPR classes. So she says she started doing the Heimlich on her. If somebody's choking on water,
that ain't gonna do nothing.
It's the only time you do the Heimlich is if they have something lodged in their throat. Mm-hmm. So I just.
But you brought up a good point. She is an educator.
Yeah, she's certified.
She would have had to have been trained in all that.
She is certified in CPR.
You do it every year, I think.
And to be honest with you, I think, now I may not be like exactly right, but I think when you're in the adoption process, you have to be certified in that as well.
If you're fostering, you do.
Yep. So it just doesn't add up to me.
No.
Something's not.
Well, yeah, obviously the kid's, unfortunately beaten to death and their only claim to why she would be in distress is drinking too much water.
And the other thing is this, if I don't bruise that quick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And you're very fair skinned. I'm just going to say you are pasty.
I am. I burn like a lobster when I'm in the sun. And so I don't bruise that quick. So for those bruises to be that bad.
Right.
That's been going on a while.
Exactly. So when the investigators asked about the bruising on Victoria's abdomen, because they said that she had purple bruising on her abdomen, Ariel told authorities that she was pushing really hard. And then when questioned about the bruising on Victoria's back and legs, Ariel accused Victoria's 7-year-old brother of having anger issues and beating her up.
Yeah.
And when asked what he would use to inflict those kind of bruises on her, because it's clear a 7-year-old couldn't do it with their hands, she said he would pick up anything he could find. Now, if that's true, why did she ever reach out to DSS and claim? Because we know it's a lie. But I'm saying, in that situation, when you've got a kid who, according to her, is just in a fit of rage that he beat his little sister, and you're not calling DSS to voice concerns that this kid may have issues, it's just sickening that she would even go there.
Yeah.
But not surprising.
Yeah. The other thing, a bruise on your ear.
How do you get that? You had to have been punched in the side of the head.
Something, because I mean, you don't have a lot of blood vessels in your ear, I wouldn't think. It's more cartilage, right?
It's cartilage, but I mean, to bruise the ear, it would have to be a pretty hard blow to the side of the head is all I can, sort of put together. Which is why I want to see the autopsy. I want to see if there was bleeding on the brain, bleeding behind the eyes, anything that indicates traumatic head injury. And it will be there if that was a cause.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, I want to see if there were any previous fractures that healed improperly that would indicate prior abuse.
Yeah.
Because they can tell.
Oh, yeah. So the detectives went to the biological brother's school and asked about his behavior and was told that he was a happy child with no signs of physical abuse towards anyone.
Right.
I mean, we've watched videos and pictures and stuff, and they seem to be
normal kids.
Just normal kids, yeah.
Yep. So the Austin Robinson, Ariel's husband, met with authorities for 2 hours after the arrest and said that he never hurt Victoria, but Ariel would spank and beat her with different things, including a belt, paddle, flip-flop, or, as he said, whatever.
Yeah, it seems like whatever she get her hands on.
So what did he say about the day that Victoria died?
He said that Ariel beat her with a belt, that he was outside the room and could hear it. When he came inside, he saw the bruising and told her, "You've gone too far."
Yeah, and that's when on the video at the bond hearing, she was shaking her head no.
Yeah. So, and we talked about he went to CVS to get medication to help the bruising go away. Mm-hmm. Here's one question. I know they were in church a lot. Are they, did anybody there see anything? Because it said she was, her attorney said she worked with children in the church.
Oh, yeah. And we have the argument that her defense attorney put forth, which includes all that. They did verify that Austin was in CVS. He was seen on camera buying the items he said he did. He was called home about 2 p.m., I guess maybe because it was clear to Ariel that the child was deceased and they were in trouble. So we talked about the mom, Casey Fairs, speaking at the bond hearing, and it's just so sad.
Yeah.
I just wanted to give her a big hug. I can't imagine, what she's having to go through. And, but the judge was very sympathetic, and you could see in the judge's face that it broke her heart.
We forgot to talk about this on the last, when you said her name, this just hit me. We forgot to talk about this. And we said, she, gave up her kids and thought she was doing the right thing for her kids. It's no different than you taking if you're overwhelmed and you can't take care of your kid, taking it to a fire department, a police station. I think you can do a church too, and dropping your kid off there because you can't take care of it.
Right.
To me, it's the same thing. So
it's selfless. It's the most unselfish thing you can do is to give up 3 children that you grew in your body, gave birth to, and say, I can't do it. They deserve a better life.
Yeah.
So as much as it hurts me, I'm going to give my children to the state of South Carolina, and I'm going to trust that you're going to find a family that's going to love these kids and support them and financially and emotionally make sure they're good.
Yeah.
And a year later, over a year and a half later, we have a dead child, and we have the foster parents blaming a 7-year-old who was a sibling.
Yeah. It's just, if you're going to be a foster parent, and we know a good many people who have adopted and are foster parents, it's a different life.
Yes.
It's a very different life. If you can't handle that, you don't need to be in the system.
Right.
Because you're not going to do anything but harm the child.
Right. Now, the defense, her lawyer, her parents, and her sister were there in the attorney's office. All this was done on Zoom, so everybody was, Ariel was by herself in a holding room in the jail. And so his arguments for her is she's 29. I would have thought she was older.
Yeah,
she must have had her kids, obviously as a teenager, because her youngest is 12 or something like that.
Yep.
So she obviously was a young mom. That she's lived in the upstate of South Carolina her whole life, graduated from Lander University with a degree in communications and Clemson for a master's in education. What else was he saying that were her good qualities?
She was a middle school teacher from 2016 to 2019. She was a children's director at a church for like 7 years. She was an assistant coach at a middle school basketball team and volunteered at the YMCA as a coach. She served on the PTA board. She volunteered at career fairs and character building workshops. She's heavily involved in her community for her whole life. She didn't have a passport. Her family's been here for 30 years. Her dad is a retired Army officer. The parents have legal custody of their kids.
Yeah, which I was wondering
where they were.
Yeah, so they do have physical custody of Ariel and Austin's biological kids.
Yep. And I think her sister was there, and it mentioned she was a pharmacist.
Mm-hmm. So when they were saying that her family would make sure that home monitoring, any stipulations you put on her if she's released, the family would ensure to look after Ariel. And she was shaking her head like, yes, they will. Yes, they will. And the whole time I'm sitting there thinking, you're not going to get bond.
No. And I'm thinking, don't tell me you're not a danger.
Right. Yeah.
And I'll tell you one thing that the judge did say that I was like, oh, that's so right. She said, I can't say that you're not a danger to yourself.
Yes, because she had those podcasts where we heard them, where she's talking about being, she said, I'm not homicidal, and then I like my freedom, and then she's talking about killing herself or not killing herself and the rapture.
Yeah.
All big red flags that, if you have a prospective adoptive parent and you can't tell me DSS does not Google search foster parents, and if they don't, they need to start, because there were a lot of things readily available online. If somebody had taken the time to look through, you would have seen this is crazy.
Yeah.
So she didn't get bond. She was very disappointed and sorry.
Yeah.
And then that was it. But the one thing too, in doing some research late last night, I did find that on top of the $25,000 prize, she also won a kitchen suite from Wayfair. Those are super expensive.
Yeah.
But we were discussing, and we're almost done with this, but money for fostering. We know that foster parents in South Carolina do get a monthly check when they are fostering kids. And sometimes if you go through the state, it can carry on. So we figured out that with the kids being 3, 5, and 7, she would have gotten a base rate of around $1,546, give or take, a month, just in income for fostering these kids. Now, after COVID, there was a supplement given, and sometimes you get a clothing allowance and other stipends.
Yeah.
So I've always kind of thought maybe these kids were a money grab for her. We know they were having financial trouble, so I guess maybe an extra couple of $1,000 a month helps.
Yeah.
But it probably, if you're in it for the wrong reasons, the money don't last, and then you just get frustrated with having kids that aren't yours.
Yeah. And I will say, at the beginning we talked about her asking for donations or whatever. I've known adopted families that do that because the court calls can just be so overwhelming. So I've seen fundraisers for adoptions and stuff like that. But
with this situation,
clearly,
it's very easy just to say she's evil because we know what she's done. But I think when what happened to Victoria Rose by her hands, when you go back and look through different videos and everything, it's very insightful into the projection she wanted to put forth publicly, and obviously what was going on at home was completely different.
Yeah.
So that's what we are totally just doing a deep dive on, and have been for a couple of weeks, trying to figure out what makes these people tick. So we're excited for Sunday. We are going to move on briefly to Emma Daybell being on Court TV with Shanley Painter, who I love.
Yeah. Yep. I like her too. She's cool.
She is so adorable.
Yeah. So I was shocked. I was like, I said that earlier, I was like, what? Because they've been so quiet.
Yes.
I mean, there was some, like Garth talked to a guy out one day and stuff like that, but you really haven't heard anything.
No.
Probably since, it was Chad's brother who released a statement, I think.
Yeah, but I think the kids prior to that just essentially didn't want to make a comment because Emma and her husband were still living at the house where the kids' bodies were found in the yard.
Yep.
So they just wanted privacy, but yeah, I do remember Garth.
Yeah. So basically, Chanley just asked her some questions, and she asked her if she would comment she made a comment about some of the stuff in the media is not correct about her mom. So Chanley asked her if she would elaborate, and she just said she's wanting to see the cause of death first before she says anything. My heart goes out to them. They've been through so much.
Mine too. And I know that Emma, in the early days before the kids were found, was seen on camera sticking her tongue out at a reporter. I get she's a teacher, and it's not a good look.
Yeah. And that was early on.
I've never had my mom die, and then my dad remarried 2 weeks later, and then all of a sudden he's the focus of a national manhunt for 2 kids.
Yeah.
And then he's arrested. The kids are found on the property. So I can't begin to understand what's going through their mind. And did you get the feeling yesterday that maybe she thinks it's going to be murder? Just the way she said, I think I know what's on that report.
Yeah. I think I know, but I want to see it, and she wants to see it before it's released, and I don't blame him for that.
No, I think they have a right with Tammy being their mother.
Yeah.
Because according to Emma, everything that they have found out regarding the autopsy, they found out like you and I have, which is through press releases.
Yeah. Yep. And I understand why law enforcement has to do some stuff that way, but I wouldn't want to find out that way.
No, it's very hard, but Emma seems like the daddy's princess. He named books after her, characters after her, and that kind of thing. It really just kind of on the surface seems like she was the favorite. So she was the most offensive of her dad initially, but I just saw a little break in that last night.
Yeah, yep. And she said that her and her siblings have been on pins and needles for, I think it's been, 18 months.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And so she made contact with Fremont County Sheriff's Office, and they informed her that they would only share the results if they met with the detective, and they all have to meet with the detective. That the stipulation would be they can't share that information with anybody. So, and we know that's common for law enforcement to do that because obviously they haven't really spoken to them about anything.
Right. And we were talking last night. I almost really think all the arrests in this case are probably over. I just don't see anybody else getting arrested at this point.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that if they have nothing to hide, for me, it would be easy for me to say I would go ahead and go. I would have talked to them a year ago. But, I just don't know the dynamic. Do they feel that talking to investigators is going to solidify their dad's fate? I don't know. I don't think what they could offer is going to be heavier than what the evidence shows in the crimes.
Yeah.
But maybe it's a subconscious feeling like you're letting your dad down. Who knows why? But if it were me, I'd just go in and do it.
Yeah. But if you think about it, you're hearing that your dad possibly killed your mother. That your dad remarried, then you're hearing, oh wait, your dad has possibly helped kill 2 kids, and if you remember, they have kids,
right?
So
it's just not easy, and a lot of times it's easy for us watching these cases unfold to very quickly judge people. And a lot of times I think there's a guilt by association where it's just sort of default that you hate this person because they're a kid of one of the defendants. But just like Colby and everybody else, these kids didn't ask for this, and they don't even know how to grieve yet. Do they grieve because their mom died a natural death? Do they grieve because their dad murdered their mom? I can't even begin to imagine emotionally. How do you even begin to grieve or accept things when you don't know a cause?
Yeah. How do you function?
You don't.
Your dad's a murderer.
What did the sheriff say in response to what Emma told Chanley?
He said that was what the stipulation. They did want to talk to him. And they can't release that and not give you a stipulation of you can't share it with anybody.
Right. And that could be why they want to meet with them, is just to reiterate to them that this is very sensitive material. Who knows? It might not even be a questioning thing. But he did say that he felt they needed to know the results. So I think maybe soon those kids, if they haven't already today, may find out. I didn't get the feeling we would know soon because the sheriff did say they're not releasing the results to the public right now, that this is still ongoing. So who knows when we're going to get charges. Yeah. It's going to be a while. I don't think it's going to be super soon for anything. It's just going to be a long pause. Yeah. But we have these other cases that we're following, and we're really big on the Victoria Rose Smith case, mainly because it's local, hits home for us, and we're going to follow all the cases that we're working on to the very end. This Sunday night, join us for a big episode on Victoria Rose, on her murderers, or alleged murderers. And
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
I do want to say thank you to everybody who signed that petition.
Yes.
Because it's getting a lot. I think it's over 30-something thousand now.
Last I saw, it was maybe 35,000 or more.
Yeah, that the family has out, and you put that on our social media. So
they're on both of our social medias, and I may pin that to the top for right now to where people that visit. That's the first thing. It takes 2 seconds, and it makes a big, big difference. I think what the family is pushing for is super important. In this case, it might have made a difference if Victoria's law was in motion now to have just these pop-in visits. Would they have seen bruises? Would they have noticed personality, how it's changed? I don't know, but it's not worth one more kid. We've got to do something. We can't spare any expense. Accountability across the board. It's just got to change. Not one child deserves for a system that is run mostly, by higher ups and politicians who really don't care. I don't think about each individual child. It can't be partisan. We all have to come together.
Yeah, exactly.
For the greater good of kids, because if we can't protect our children, we are failing at a very basic level.
Yeah. There has to be a change.
So we're going to keep an eye on everything. If anything pops up for Gannon, for Vallow, Daybell, or for Miss Victoria Rose Smith, we will hop back on. Otherwise, we will see you guys on Sunday for a full episode, and hope you guys have a great weekend.